Welcome back. We got a ton of news and politics. We're going to get right into it. We're going to start with the possible peace negotiations between Ukraine and Russia. Trump seems to be coming to a deal within the next 5 days. That's what it seems to look like. The EU is absolutely panicking. Their entire future is based on a war with Russia where they can exploit Russia and take their minerals from them. That has always been the plan. We're going to get into it. I got my producer Nat over here.
Hello.
Okay, let's get into the first story. And this was the cover story.
From Glenn Dyson, the EU panics that peace may break out as the US presents its peace proposal to Zelensky. Callas still defines peace in terms of sanctions and weapons while refusing diplomacy. The aim of an unconditional ceasefire is to temporarily freeze the front, rearm, and prolong the war.
Yeah, and General Kellogg was one of the peace negotiators. The other peace negotiator was Witkoff. They had two different approaches. General Kellogg was kind of working with the EU and the people that wanted to keep this war going, so they were constantly sabotaging it. He came out today and said he is going to retire at the end of his term because it looks like things have gone the other way. Witkoff seems to be negotiating a deal with Russia that could repair U.S.-Russia relations, and that is the best possible solution. If the U.S. can have economic ties with Russia on a business front, an energy front, and other things like this to hopefully help supply the EU with energy as well, although the EU seems to want nothing but war, that would be the best thing. Okay, let's play what she has to say here. And this is kind of the sentiment of most EU politicians today.
First, we're going to discuss Ukraine. We had a very good plan to discuss very specifically what more can we do with the shadow fleet, because it really has an effect on Russia's revenues to finance this war. But of course, now we are going to discuss also, the recent news. What we as Europeans have always supported is a long-lasting and just peace, and we welcome any efforts to achieve that. Of course, for any plan to work, it needs Ukrainians and Europeans on board. So this is very clear. Also, we have to understand that in this war there is one aggressor and one victim, so we haven't heard of any concessions on the Russian side. If Russia really wanted peace, it could have, agreed to unconditional ceasefire already some time ago, whereas we see again over this night bombings of civilians. 93% of Russian targets have been civilian infrastructure, schools, hospitals, apartment buildings, to really kill a lot of people and cause as much suffering as possible. So this is our standing.
Okay, and we have to realize that especially the city of London, the UK, France, and Germany are the main ones that want to push this war forward. Germany wants to push it forward on the entire behalf of every EU country. A lot of EU countries are against it. They actually get their energy from Russia, and they are having a real tough time right now. That being said, there has also been rumors that possibly they would build a bridge under Alaska to secure economic ties between the U.S. and Russia if they can work out this peace deal. The U.S. has to find a way to kind of buddy up to Russia to some degree to hopefully in the future maybe separate them from China the best they can. Under the Biden administration, they really pushed Russia and China together in an alliance nobody really thought would happen. It did happen, and I don't think there's any breaking that tie right now, especially if we want to avoid World War III. I think Iran, Russia, and China have to stick closely together to kind of ward off the EU. The EU is war. By 2030, if they don't get a war, I don't know what they're going to do. They're trying to bring in censorship and a lot of other things. Let's go to the next story. And there was a ton of stories coming out of the EU today about them wanting to prepare for war, get ready for war, and this is on the eve of these peace talks that seem to be coming to a conclusion. They're finally putting this peace negotiation on paper. They've had talks in the past, but now it's finally going on paper. It looks like Russia is going to get to keep what they have. The Ukraine is going to disarm, and there's not going to be a lot of peacekeepers within the Ukraine. And that's an important point because France, the UK, and Germany wanted to flood Ukraine with peacekeepers is which they would call them, which would really just be plotting to start another war or restart the war with Russia if it did end.
From Lord Bebo or Bibo, the French must be prepared to lose their own children. Chief of French General Staff, General Fabien Mandon, I think.
Si notre pays flanche parce qu'il n'est pas prêt à accepter de perdre ses enfants, parce qu'il faut dire les choses, de souffrir économiquement parce que les priorités iront à de la production de défense, par exemple. Si on n'est pas prêt à ça, alors on est en risque. Et je pense qu'on a la force d'âme. La France a toujours démontré sa force d'âme dans les moments difficiles. Et là, on est dans le moment où il faut en parler. Il faut en parler dans vos communes. Parce que spontanément, c'est pas des lectures du dimanche, c'est pas quelque chose d'accessible facilement. On peut avoir le sentiment que c'est loin, et c'est vrai que ça reste loin. La mécanique, c'est pas des chars russes qui débarquent.
Okay, and we have to realize if you've been following the French, not only in economy, but politics, they are on the verge of collapse, maybe more so than any other country. The UK is running very close behind them. A war would have taken a lot of pressure on them, put them in a wartime economy, let them strip their citizens of their freedom, whether it was freedom of speech, freedom of movement, or a lot of other things they have recently been trying to do. They also wanted to ban a lot of these American social media companies. In a time of war, they would be able to do that. So let's go into this next one. You can read this whole thing. I know it's a little bit long, but this is indicative of not only France, but the UK and Germany. Eastern European countries are not so gung-ho to go to war with Russia. They would like to see an end to this thing.
From Marion Awful, France tells citizens get ready for war and bring board games. The French government has issued a resilience guide urging citizens to prep a 72-hour emergency kit with water, canned food, meds, and games. This comes after the military chief warned France must be ready to lose our children in a war with Russia. The guide recommends enlisting in the military, police, or firefighting corps, just in case playing Monopoly doesn't cut it in a missile strike. Be feared to be free, Macron said, as the country pivots from freedom, equality, fraternity to pepper kits, torches, and canned peas. So
yeah,
EFE.
And with all these EU countries really splitting from the civilian population of these countries going in a completely opposite direction, flooding the country with immigrants, trying to press a war with Russia, it's going to be really hard to recruit in these countries. Maybe they can recruit the immigrants that they allowed in, possibly, but I think what they want to do is send the generation of young men off to war so they'll have a very globalist liberal bloc left, so it will take out a lot of these far-right parties. That would be an extra benefit to going to war with Russia, at least in their minds. They're also trying to roll out a digital ID, a digital currency. There is a lot of pushback, not only in France, the UK, Germany, but across the entire EU. How are they going to implement that if they don't get a war? If they get a war, it's going to be very easy to do this because in a time of war, a lot of the laws change in these countries. Okay, if you wanted to know more about that war and what's going on, we did do a show last night, me and Nat. That was one of the big topics, not just the war that's kind of the EU wants to press as the US tries to conclude the conflict within Russia, but there are a lot of things kind of emerging worldwide right now. Okay, we're going to go into Canada, and this kind of made my stomach turn. I don't like to see the government using kids as propaganda to bring in censorship. This is a new low for the Canadian government. Let's get into it. I wouldn't be surprised if the EU or other Western countries start doing this.
From Wiretap Media, the government has resorted to using immigrant children with speech impediments to convince Canadians how important it is to suppress free speech and pass the Online Harms Act. They've already started using the whole security and children's safety online as a cudgel to bring in digital ID and
Well, and you're absolutely right about this. Over in Australia, they're banning anybody, I believe that's 15 or under. You're going to have a digital ID, but they're going to roll digital ID out across all Australia. You have to log online. The excuse for that is they need to protect the 15-year-olds. They're on social media for too long. It's now being banned to only a few hours a day.
Most kids my age are online every day on Instagram, Fortnite, Snapchat, and TikTok, and even using AI to do their schoolwork. We go online to learn, play games, and talk to friends, but we also see things we shouldn't. We get messages from strangers, see bullying, and sometimes even things that make us scared or confused. It's hard to know what's real or safe anymore, especially in this AI era. Today, children face challenges never seen before, and the law should adapt to this new reality. We've been told for years that change is coming, but kids are still getting hurt every day. Parents can't do this alone, kids can't do this alone. We need the government and tech companies to do their jobs, to make sure that being online doesn't mean being unsafe. Every day that goes by without this law is another day that children can be harmed.
Well, okay, that's good. Well, we need the government and tech companies to do their jobs by stripping citizens of their freedoms in order to protect the children. No, the government is not the children's parents. The parents are the parents, and the parents need to do that job. If they can't do it, well, it's not the government's job to step in and strip all citizens' freedoms like they're currently doing in Australia and they're planning to do in the UK and the rest of the EU. It's absolutely important that we understand the propaganda these governments are putting out in the name of children's safety. We have to strip all citizens of their freedom. That's going to be the line. There's a lot of other lines they're trying to use in order to roll out this digital ID, then roll out a digital currency, and then roll out a social credit score. It's the Chinese model they want to bring to all of these Western countries.
It would also be good if they invested in actual education and teaching children how to read off of a page.
And how to discern propaganda from non-propaganda and what stranger danger is. Maybe educate these kids rather than just banning all this from their eyes. Okay, let's go into Trump here.
From Alex Jones, Trump is attempting to cut off billions in Venezuelan money laundering that funds the Democrat deep state, and the CIA is pissed. That's it.
Okay, yeah, we're going to play the clip, but this is very interesting. Through USAID and other NGOs, they were funneling a lot of money into Venezuela. That money would then be funneled back out into Democrat elections or other causes they felt were necessary. It could also be funded into South America. Transgender Story Hour was a thing that was popping up in South America, and there is no need for it there. There's no need for it anywhere, but especially there. It's really pushing propaganda in a place propaganda doesn't need to be pushed.
Notice the CIA doesn't want Trump to go into Venezuela. They're saying Maduro will step down, just leave his security chief, his intelligence head in. He'll go to Switzerland or wherever, and he'll still be the boss. And the CIA will still honor the money. And Trump's like, no, I know that's funding the deep state Democrats I want to cut off because Trump's got.
Okay, and that being said, we just have to realize that they're saying do not go into Venezuela. Maduro will step down. I've been saying Trump was going to get Maduro to step down at the end of his first term. He had almost negotiated for Maduro, his family, and his inner circle to step down. That's why Trump is applying all of this pressure right now. I would expect him to step down. The problem is you can't keep the other people in power. Otherwise, you're going to keep the money laundering operation going. That being said, it seems like Trump does have a few good people in his administration that are aware of this. I'm sure Alex Jones talking about this will make it back up the ladder.
Got people like Michael Flynn, who used to at the highest security levels have access to everything and still does, who knows how it all works. You don't think Trump just showed up to send in troops and the rest of it into Panama? Their government said, sure, we're with you, help push out the China bombs. You don't just think Trump just came up with all this on his own on the golf course, do you?
Okay, and that's pretty good. I just wanted to use that as an opportunity to talk about the whole situation. Also, we have to realize Venezuela is one of the big countries. Even though it's a smaller country, China funnels a ton of money into Venezuela. That money is then funneled around Central and South America and also into the U.S. That way it kind of washes the Chinese money away so people don't know it's coming from China or Chinese propaganda wings. Okay, let's go into the next Trump.
From Shadow of Ezra, President Trump is demanding the arrest of several Democrats who, in a public video, urged the CIA to refuse orders from the sitting commander-in-chief. He says their actions should amount to sedition at the highest level and insists these traitors should be put on trial. Trump says they must be made an example of.
Yeah, and this is a story I brought up yesterday, and I was actually shocked by the video. These Democrats were kind of telling people you don't have to follow unlawful orders. Yeah, we know that, but that's kind of fueling dissent within the military, within the CIA, and within the FBI, especially at a time where they have massive amounts of troops deployed all around the world, but especially in Venezuela and Southeast Asia. They have CIA contractors in Venezuela right now as well. You do not want to be fomenting dissent at a time like this, especially when a lot of these negotiations are going on in Ukraine, in Venezuela, with China. There's also heightened tensions because of these tariff negotiations, what's going on with possible color revolutions in the world. This could compromise not only assets, but you need to get these people back in line. A lot of these people were former FBI and CIA agents themselves. They're telling these people they don't have to follow orders. If these people actually follow through and it's found that they did have to follow orders, nobody's going to be there for them. These Democratic politicians are going to abandon them in a heartbeat. Okay, we can play the clip if we have it. It's the same clip from yesterday, but I just want to replay it so people know what it was.
I'm Senator Alyssa Slotkin.
Senator Mark Kelly.
Representative Chris DeLuzio.
Congresswoman Maggie Goodlander.
Representative Chrissy Houlihan.
Congressman Jason Crow. I was a captain in the United States Navy.
Former CIA officer.
Former Navy.
Former paratrooper and Army Ranger.
Former intelligence officer.
Former Air Force.
We want to speak directly to members of the military
And the intelligence community.
Who take risks each day to keep Americans safe.
We know you are under enormous stress and pressure right now.
Americans trust their military.
But that trust is at risk.
This administration is pitting our uniformed military
And intelligence community professionals
against American citizens.
like us. You all swore an oath
To protect and defend this Constitution.
Right now, the threats to our Constitution aren't just coming from abroad, but from right here at home.
Our laws are clear. You can refuse illegal orders.
You can refuse illegal orders.
You must refuse illegal orders.
No one has to carry out orders that violate the law.
Or our Constitution.
We know this is hard and that it's a difficult time to be a public servant.
But whether you're serving in the CIA,
The Army.
Our Navy,
The Air Force.
Your vigilance is critical.
and know that we have your back.
Because now, more than ever,
The American people need you.
We need you to stand up for our laws.
our Constitution,
and who we are as
Okay, and
Americans.
that's good. And that's the clip just so we have a context of what it is. But when you're saying you can refuse illegal orders, you can refuse illegal orders. Yeah, they know they can refuse illegal orders, but that's kind of ambiguous. What is an illegal order if these people go ahead and don't follow orders at critical moments that actually are illegal orders because this propaganda is being put in their head? People's lives could be at risk in a major way. It's not like we're at a time of peace right here. We're not necessarily in World War III, but there are a lot of skirmishes and intelligence agencies out there at the ground level. Okay, we can go into the next clip, and I think it's slightly related to this one. Sorry, my dog's chewing things again.
From X Alerts, breaking Democrats are calling for President Trump to be forced out of office after he accused them of seditious behavior and shared a post that said, "Hang them, George Washington would."
Yeah, and this is, I agree with him. This is seditious behavior. I don't think it's enough to prosecute them on, but this is a stern warning. This is simply a true social, something he put out on social media, and he needs to make sure Democrats know we are going to prosecute you if you do enact sedition amongst soldiers or you incite sedition. He needs to do something like this before he actually does something else. The Democrats are going to continue to escalate, especially as the midterms come up. So I take this just as a warning. The Democrats are going over the top today. They're in the House, they're in the Senate, and they're just trying to make a show on national TV talking about Trump's asking for their head. He's not asking for anything like that. This is a warning shot. Nobody's actually even being prosecuted at this point. If they continue to go down this road, I hope somebody is prosecuted.
I think the video is the same one.
Yeah, the video is the same one, so we don't need to play the video. I just wanted to show their reaction to it, and there was actually a lot more reaction than just that. I did have video from the Senate floor, but I got a little bit too many stories today, so...
And from Eric Doherty, President Trump and J.D. Vance not invited to the funeral for Dick Cheney. Those seen in the building include Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, George Bush, and Mitch McConnell. No surprise there.
Yeah, and this is absolutely fantastic. I don't want to necessarily tarnish his name, especially on his funeral day, but Dick Cheney was the mastermind behind the George Bush administration. There's a lot of talk and memes going out that Trump's going to run for a third term, possibly as vice president. That would be kind of a way around it. Trump has said he is not going to do that. But with Dick Cheney, this was the case where the vice president was really the puppet master behind not only the president, but everybody else. It resulted in the Iraq war and the lies about weapons of mass destruction and a lot of other things. It's a good look that President Trump and J.D. Vance aren't there. If they were there, rumors could possibly start of a uniparty, what's going on behind the scenes, especially with a lot of talk about Trump becoming a corporatist, going away from his base. I wouldn't like the fact that he wasn't invited. I would be happy that he wasn't invited. Therefore, he doesn't have to turn it down. Okay, you can actually play the clip. The funeral was actually pretty good. I watched some of it today. There's a lot of clips online. I personally just did not like Dick Cheney, especially because all the lies he propagated at the time and the American lives that died for it.
I don't know if I would say if a funeral is pretty good. I'd say maybe it was respectful.
It was for a funeral. For a funeral, it was a good funeral.
I don't think there's a good funeral.
Yeah, because they had the procession. I mean, it was a lot of.
It was well done.
Yeah, it was well done.
Okay.
They had. I mean, yeah, it was really good for a funeral. Okay, and that's good. So it was a powerhouse of who's who was at that funeral. Conservatives, or at least MAGA conservatives, weren't there. I think this is a good optic, especially at a time like this. George Bush did give a speech. Yeah, I'll kind of leave it there. I did want to mention it because it was making headlines today.
From Alex Jones, President Trump holds emergency meeting with top pollster Mark Mitchell after watching his interview on the Alex Jones show, warning of massive midterm defeats for the Republicans on the White House's current course.
Okay, yeah, and you were actually on WDW Pro today. He wasn't on there, but he does appear on WDW Pro with you a few times, so we didn't know who he is. I wanted to pull it because I actually like him. I don't agree with all of his opinions, but we'll play it. If you do want to watch the whole clip, it is on X. We'll watch the first couple minutes, though.
So I was brought down to Washington, D.C. It was a great honor. I'd never been there in the White House before at all. And, you know, I had some meetings with people. I got to talk to JD, Susie Wiles, Marco Rubio, and I got to talk to the president for a while. And I wasn't told not to say anything. Like, I don't know. I don't want to go too much into it, but also I don't really remember it because I do this stream of consciousness like you do. This is my information. I want to give as much information as possible. And you know how Trump is. It's also a stream of consciousness about the things that he's surrounded with. I mean, my impressions are he's in it. He is trying to solve Americans' problems. He is getting information. He's intuitively, I think, making decisions based on that information. But this aspect of like there being a larger organized plan and that we're executing on something intentional, like I didn't feel like that exists. And I felt like maybe the subtext of why I was invited there was because they realized they need to get different voices because, quite frankly, there's this aspect of the youth that the White House doesn't really get. And I think they were getting a lot of that from Charlie Kirk. I think they're trying to find new voices to really sort of understand that. Thank you for being...
Yeah, and we're going to continue to listen to Alex Jones in just a minute because he has a good take on this as well. That being said, if they want to solve this, they just need to start delivering on promises they made to the base. Bannon was there day by day. He was trying to kind of follow through with the promises. What did we do today to follow through with the promises? They didn't like that. They wanted to go in more of a corporate direction. Susie Wiles is making sure of that. The more control Susie Wiles gets in that administration, the more the base is going to get upset. They're trying to bring people like him in because, yeah, they don't have a Charlie Kirk. I don't think he's a Charlie Kirk. I do like the guy, though, so I think any input he can give would be good, but it's really very simple. You got to disengage from foreign wars. If you can get into this Ukraine-Russia conflict, big win. If you can get Maduro to step down without actually getting involved in a conflict, another big win. There's a lot of things Trump can do, but he is going more down this corporate direction, saying, I'm getting $1 trillion. I'm getting another $1 trillion. I have $22 trillion. And he's getting all from foreign investors. And these foreign investors are investing in America, but they're wanting to bring workers over and a lot of other things. A lot of his base is thinking they're letting foreign countries get their claws back into America. Now, I think a little bit differently. I think America does need that investment in order to bring manufacturing coming back. That being said, they definitely need to start delivering and focusing on America first. I think the base is fairly loud at what they're saying, and that is start putting America first. Another thing, and probably the biggest thing he can do, is disengage from Israel. Now, I know this is a controversial topic, so he can actually use Saudi Arabia to America could stop funding Israel, actually give that money to Saudi Arabia, and have Saudi Arabia give it to Israel as an in-between. Saudi Arabia is currently giving $1 trillion to the United States. The United States could simply give $20 billion of that back and have them fund Israel rather than the United States directly. It is a bad optic with Israel being involved in 7 wars and the U.S. constantly funding that. The base is pretty loud. They want that to stop. It doesn't mean they have to stop being Israel's ally, not by any means. It means they need to create alliances within that region between Saudi Arabia, Turkey, and Israel, so they can kind of play nicely in their own sandbox, and the United States can kind of disengage from that region. That's what the base really wants at this point, and I think they're yelling from the mountaintop. Now, Trump has been pretty good on free speech, especially when you compare him to the Biden administration. Okay, let's see what Alex Jones said about this. I did like Alex's take, but we're not going to watch it all.
Being a visionary, because you're looking around at what you see around you and seeing the same kind of things I am, and I can put numbers to them, but it was very gracious of you to let me talk. We talked for an hour and we laid the whole thing out. This is where we're at. This is the problems. This is what needs to be addressed. And I really do think that it was critical in helping me get my message across, helping me go down there.
We're in a revolutionary period, fourth turning. It's always driven by the youth. It's a mega turning. And they want action. They want reform. And so they're going to go to what is seen as extreme, a Nick Fuentes or a Mondami, and that they want to hear the narrative of going after the establishment, not endless parades of billionaires pledging to invest money here, which for a 79-year-old business tycoon, that's really delivering. And we've seen some numbers come out of jobless, going down in a lot of good things, even though he's swimming against the current. So for Trump, he's technical. He's like, hey, I'm working my ass off here. But he's talking to us like a 79-year-old titan. He needs to get the messaging to the youth that no, they elected you because they tried to kill you. You're seen as a maverick, an outlaw, a rebel, which you really are against the system. So get the rebel messaging going. I mean, literally, if Trump goes out and shoots up a case of Bud Light, by the way, Trump's never been seen shooting a gun. And I'm being serious. What the youth want. In real issues he's delivering. He needs to go out and shoot automatic weapons. He needs to shoot cases of Bud Light. He needs to go on stage with Kid Rock and sing.
That's pretty good. And I will say this, there is a movement emerging with Nick Fuentes. He's talking about Christian nationalism, kind of uniting with the left with National Socialism. So it would bring the far left and far right together. If Trump fails in the midterms, and he fails dramatically, and the polling is kind of shaping up to that, Rasmussen and a lot of other pollers are not liking what they're seeing for the midterms as far as it comes to the conservatives. If they shit the bed in the midterms, this idea coming from the America First movement, whether it's Tucker Carlson, Nick Fuentes, and everybody, Steve Bannon, everybody else over there that really knows the populist movement. If the populist right reaches out to the populist left and they can create some kind of uniparty where the left gives up immigration and the right socializes maybe medicine and a few other things, it's going to be very popular amongst the youth. Trump needs to figure this out now, well before the midterms, so he can realign with his base. So after he's done, J.D. Vance or whoever he's going to kind of give the scepter to kind of inherits the movement, because if he betrays his base now, or the base feels like he's been turning more into a corporatist than an American first president, they're going to kind of take over. They're prepping for what comes after Trump. Trump's kind of in the moment trying to make America great again. He's not necessarily prepping for the midterms. The fact that he has invited this individual and others to the White House to try to figure this out before the midterms is very important. If I was him, I would have asked Trump to ask Susie Wiles to leave the room. Like, she's the one corrupting the entire administration. A lot of the MAGA base know her specifically is the problem, bringing lobbyists, bringing corporatists into the administration to block out people like Tulsi Gabbard and RFK. He needs to really bring these America First people he brought into the movement, like RFK, like Tulsi Gabbard, and put them front and center stage. But he can't look like he's using them. Like, he brought them in during the election, got elected, put RFK in a position of power to do things, and then Susie Wild is completely blocking him out and freezing him out of the administration. And now if Trump kind of just brings him in to win the midterms, it's not going to look good if they start freezing him out again.
And again, that was Mark Mitchell, pollster Mark Mitchell from Rasmussen.
Yeah, and congratulations to him for going to the White House. I was actually surprised he got invited. That was great. He is a good pollster overall.
He's one of the top ones.
There's one other one that Robert Barnes goes into that I like a little bit more, but he's probably number 2 for me. Very good.
And again, that whole Nick Fuentes idea of National Socialism, if that rings a bell for you for some reason and the idiot youth do decide to go that way, National Socialism is the Yahtzees.
Yeah,
if you catch my drift.
And how this is kind of going is they're proposing Christian nationalism to the right and National Socialism to the left. And
Democratic Socialism.
No,
the Social Democrats.
No, they're proposing National Socialism to the left. What they're telling them is they have to give up immigration, and they'll give them.
No, I understand, but they're painting it with the Socialist Democrats of America. That's the way, the route they're going.
Okay, let's go into this next story. And this was pretty interesting. I've known about this for a long time, but I think the Trump administration is going to kind of be bringing this to the surface more and more. Let's kind of read it a little bit.
From Informal Economy, Global Organized Crime Index from 2025, criminal market scores, number 1 is Mexico.
And it's Mexico by a wide margin here. And they've been there for a long time. If Trump is going to start a war because he is an anti-war candidate, the only way he could actually start something would be with Mexico on the southern border. And I'm not talking about invading. I'm talking about working with the Mexican government to get rid of the cartels, or potentially linking, if the Mexican government won't let Trump in, I think Trump will link up with one of the other cartels to have them wipe out the other cartels and then roll that cartel up into the government in a position of power where he can work with them. I think he wants to legitimize Mexico, invest in Mexico. He's looking at the North American hemisphere now and the South American hemisphere as their backyard, especially as this multipolar world kind of emerges. He's realizing North and South America, which is kind of being neglected by the United States. He's going to really need to focus on that for the long-term vision and future of the U.S.
Do you want me to go down?
No, but you talked a lot about what's been going on in Mexico yesterday on your Spanish podcast. Why don't you talk a little bit about it?
Yes, on my Spanish show, I speak about what's usually happening in Latin America and Mexico, but also on our English show, I have been trying to clear up some of the details around the protests that happen here in Mexico and other things that happen in Mexico that get twisted both in the traditional media, but also with independent journalists from the States and English-speaking independent journalists who don't have the full information or knowledge from on the ground, I've found.
Oh, but no, I was going to have you talk about that article a little bit.
What article?
What we were just looking at, Mexico.
Sorry.
What's going on with the politician, what's going on with the color revolution that was kind of coming up over the weekend, things like that.
Well, it is not really a color revolution. It is a march. There's a lot of marches here in Mexico. And while it looked really big, it was actually not as big as some other ones like the Feminist March. Of course, our government and our governors and our politicians are completely corrupted, and the system has been that way essentially since its inception. Here, for example, there has never really been a right-wing party or a right-wing government. It has always been center, center-left, and slightly center-right.
Well, yeah, I would actually say with that National Socialism thing Nick Fuentes is going to do, it's far more likely to succeed in a place like Mexico where there is no conservative movement, basically.
But again, National Socialism is Yahtzees.
I understand that, but you have to understand that movement is starting to become popular. It's not necessarily Yahtzees. It's anti-war, take out the violence. So they're trying to repitch it in a different way. You also have to realize, communism, socialism, it's constantly being rebranded and trying to be brought into a lot of these countries. It would work in a place like Mexico because there is no traditional conservative movement.
Unfortunately, that is why we have to build
on the national stage.
And that is why we have to build one. So stuff like that, ridiculous ideas like that, don't come in.
Okay, let's go into this next story here.
From Eric Doherty, breaking experts shocked as the United States adds stunning 119,000 jobs despite only 50,000 expected. Federal government is lost 3,000 jobs.
Yeah, and this is pretty big. What we're seeing happen is the the reindustrialization of America, and a lot of people said it wouldn't work. You already seen the money kind of roll in. People said you wouldn't see any jobs because it takes years to build these manufacturing plants. But the thing is, when you're building a lot of these manufacturing plants and things like this, there is a ton of construction jobs, and especially because a lot of the illegal workers right now are kind of being pushed out of the country. You're seeing raids being done on a lot of these construction sites. It's Americans getting these jobs. Therefore, the job numbers are actually going up because they are on the books. So a lot of people did not take into consideration that even the construction of these manufacturing plants are going to bring a lot of jobs in a lot of different ways, whether that's plumbing, electrician, regular construction, day workers. I mean, you name it, it's going to take tens of thousands of people to build this. Ford had come out today, said they have over 1 million job openings right now. I would not be surprised if they try to fill those with some kind of foreign worker, possibly conservatives from Canada. There is a lot of talk about that coming up, and Trump possibly offering immigration status to skilled red sealed workers from Canada. These would be conservatives. This would help his voting base. Those people are naturally attracted to the United States, and there are jobs that can't be filled right now by Americans.
And here we go. This is the September jobs report. Non-farm payrolls are up a robust 119,000. 119,000 will be the best since April, when we were up 158,000. In the rearview mirror, well, last month was downgraded from 22,000 to minus 4,000. Now, if we look at what's going on with the unemployment rate.
Okay, that's pretty good. I just kind of wanted to go over the general overview here. Let's go into the next story. And what did I grab?
From Red Wave Press, President Trump announces he has signed the Epstein Files Transparency Act to release all remaining Epstein documents. Trump wrote on Truth Social, Jeffrey Epstein, who was charged by the Trump Justice Department in 2019, not the Democrats, was a lifelong Democrat, donated thousands of dollars to Democrat politicians, and was deeply associated with many.
That's pretty good. I just wanted to bring up the fact that he did sign this on his desk. Both the House and the Senate voted unanimously, except for one member. So this is very rare that this happened. It went to Trump's desk for him to sign. He almost was forced to sign this. It would be extremely bad optics. The issue that a lot of the base is having, as soon as this passed the House and the Senate, they knew it was going to go to Trump's desk. They knew Trump was going to sign it, but everybody said he would go to the back door and go to Pam Bondi and also Mike Johnson, and tell them to open new cases and have different excuses why they have to redact and wash these files so they can't be completely released. Now, there were a couple Epstein court cases where those documents have already been approved, so you're going to have a couple troves of those coming out. But where a lot of these criminal happenings will be happening, I think those files are being washed right now. One of the lawyers, though, had seen the entire trove of Epstein files, and he said there was at least 6 to 12 extremely high-profile individuals that should be going to jail for a long time from those. So if these files are released and you're not getting a absolute minimum of 6 to 12 high-profile individuals where charges are pressed, it's going to look like they washed the files.
Is there anything you want me to show?
You can kind of play it real quick.
Okay.
There is breaking news. The president has just posted on his social network that he has now signed the Epstein Files Transparency Act. It is long, quoting the relevant portion from it, quote, Jeffrey Epstein, who was charged by the Trump Justice Department in 2019, not the Democrats, was a lifelong Democrat, donated thousands of dollars to Democrat politicians, and was deeply associated with many well-known Democrat figures, such as Bill Clinton, who traveled on his plane 26 times.
And he keeps saying Democrats, Democrats, Democrats. He knows the midterms are coming up. He knows these Epstein files aren't looking good. Let's just remember, Trump was a Democrat most of his life. And the big problem with a lot of these files, it showed that Epstein was actually involved with the Trump administration way past when Trump said. The latest email that has been found at this point is 2018, and that's just what has been released. He was elected in 2016. That means he was still having a connection to Jeffrey Epstein, not Trump himself, but Steve Bannon, and it's not a good look. That being said, this is a bipartisan issue, but now what we're expecting is charges to be laid on both Democrats and Republicans based upon these files being released. If he doesn't do that, there's going to be people are going to think these files were washed. Okay, that's kind of good. We can go into the next article here.
Post. From Uncommon Sense, there is concern that the president and DOJ are going to open up investigations to stonewall some of the files. Here's the reality. There are thousands of victims. There's no way he can open up enough investigations to stop it, says Thomas Massey, who has been fighting the administration on this as well.
Yeah, okay, yeah, we can play this. And Thomas Massey has been absolutely fantastic about these Epstein files. He has been the one to kind of rally the troops to kind of break from Trump and say, we need to vote to unlock these files. Now, if Trump washes these files through Pam Bondi, opening more cases, well, this is Trump's last term, and a lot of these politicians' entire future is going to ride on kind of breaking from Trump on this one issue.
Well, today's a great day. Yesterday, we passed the Epstein resolution to release the files with a 427-1 majority. This comes after 5 months of battling the Speaker. And frankly, the President, the FBI Director, the Attorney General, the Vice President, they were all working against something they had initially been for. But what we accomplished was we got the People's House to work. Even though the Speaker of the House didn't want to do the people's will, we used something called a discharge petition. And it even surprised me when we got to the finish line how quickly things happened. Once it passed in the House, the Speaker of the House urged the Senate to modify the bill. He didn't like it, but he had lost control of the House here, and we got the bill passed exactly as Ro Khanna and I wrote it. But before it even went to the Senate, they agreed by unanimous consent to pass the bill before they even received it. I've never seen the Senate move this fast. They didn't change a word of it or any punctuation. And so I expect today or very soon the president will sign the bill to release the Epstein files. And it's a quick timeline in there. We said that within 30 days they have to release these files. And we put some very tight guardrails on the things that they could redact. There's concern that the president's going to open a bunch of investigations to keep the disclosures from happening. Here's the reality. There are 1,000 victims of Epstein's sex trafficking ring. There are dozens of perpetrators. There's no way he can open enough investigations to keep us from getting the files that will implicate most of these men. So I think we're going to see justice. I'm excited. If there's any hope, you've seen it here today and yesterday here in the House.
Yeah, and we hope the files come out with as few redactions as possible and these things aren't washed. And the way we're going to be judging this is based on the bipartisan prosecutions that happen, both for Democrats and Republicans here. This is a real opportunity. I know Trump was really trying to make a power play to get people to vote against the release of these. That being said, he should be happy they kind of broke for him, because coming up to the midterms, that would have been a death knell in a lot of these people's coffin if they voted against releasing these files. Okay, we can go into, and we actually have a couple articles here about Greg Abbott in Texas and dealing with the Muslim issue that's kind of coming up there.
From Gunther Eagleman. Texas Governor Greg Abbott just went full beast mode on radical Sharia courts trying to infiltrate Texas. We know of at least 2 Sharia courts operating in the Dallas area. I am deploying the Texas Department of Public Safety to root out any Sharia courts anywhere in the state of Texas.
Yeah, and this is absolutely fantastic, but we are going to have a clip after this one. These first 2 clips are going to kind of hype Greg Abbott up. The third one's going to show how he really plays politics. That being said, I'm glad when he makes good decisions, and we should keep pushing him in the right direction. The problem is he funded a lot of these mosques with grants from the Texas government in the first place.
On it, Israel. We know of at least 2 that exist in the Dallas area. We're looking broader in Dallas County as well as Collin County, which is right next to Dallas. And that's why I sent the letter to officials both in Dallas and Collin counties to urge them to take action to root out any Sharia courts. And I am deploying the Texas Department of Public Safety to also root out any Sharia courts anywhere in the state of Texas. To be clear, the Texas Constitution does not allow Sharia courts or Sharia law. Texas statutes have banned Sharia law, and we are going to pursue this until we purge any attempt to impose Sharia law in Texas. On it, Israel.
Okay, we know that's good. And we can go right into the next clip, actually, or article.
From InfoWars, Sarah Gonzalez exposes Governor Greg Abbott for being a WEF gun for hire, all bark and no bite. The Islamic takeover of Texas is real, and need a leader who has the guts to address this threat head on.
Okay.
You want me to play it?
Yeah, you can play this one.
I personally believe that Greg Abbott, who we know has ties to the World Economic Forum, I personally believe Greg Abbott is a plant. I don't believe that Greg Abbott wants the state of Texas to be as conservative as the constituency wants it to be. And I think that Greg Abbott is all hat, no cattle, all bark, no bite when it comes to all of these tweets that he puts out. He wants to sound very, very conservative and very foreboding and, it's final boss energy, when in actuality, he really, all he does, here's what he does, Brianna. He goes, this is his policy, like this. Thank you for putting that up. He is he's licking his finger and sticking it in the air, and he's trying to see which way the wind blows. And whichever way the wind blows is what he, in fact, is going to take the position on. And that's why you see him over here. I'm calling him out. That's why you see him saying, today I designated Muslim Brotherhood and CARE, the Council on American Islamic Relations. They're terrorist groups and they can't buy up Texas land. See, I'm in it for you, the conservative. And you have to ask yourself, like, well, Greg, why then did you give in taxpayer money in the state of Texas $13 million to mosques that have ties to these very same organizations that you claim to be working against? That is just fact. Greg Abbott's office has given grant money upwards of $13 million to a lot of these mosques that have those ties. So if you want to keep that out of the state of Texas, why would you be funding it? These are questions that Greg Abbott does not want to answer. He wants to post the tweet, he wants to feel really good about it, and he wants to walk away. But unfortunately, when you have places like Epic City being built in the state of Texas, this is the Muslim, all-inclusive compound that one of these mosques is trying to build, and they're inviting foreigners to come and buy up the land. You have to ask yourself, is Greg Abbott
good? And we have to remember, Texas was a purple state, and only in the last election with Trump has it become really red. Part of that problem was Greg Abbott kind of fence-sitting and not really taking a side. If he thinks it's in his best interest to be extremely conservative, he's going to do that. But when it's time to fund the mosque, he was doing that as well. We kind of have to weed out these candidates that shift with the wind and have some candidates with some real backbone behind them. I do like him on this particular policy, but he's going to have to start following this up with more and start showing real action and maybe explain why he did some of these things in his past and these connections with the World Economic Forum. Another one of these Texas politicians is Dan Crenshaw and his connections with the World Economic Forum. Okay.
And luckily, I have seen more and more talk from other political commentators, content creators, etc. on the right, speaking up again about Sharia law and the just.
Yeah,
Islam.
This is becoming a huge issue in the EU and the UK. It's also somewhat of an issue in Minnesota specifically, which is the largest Muslim population in the United States, and in Texas with this mega city they're kind of building and forcing HOA type fees to get paid to the mosque itself. Greg Abbott seems to be trying to clean Texas up, but he's also the one that funded it. So I'm glad he's making the right decision now, but they need to kind of fix this before it breaks out of just Texas and Minnesota. And especially with the $1 trillion investment coming from Saudi Arabia. I mean, I could see more of this kind of happening over the long term, and immigration policies getting loosened up for Saudi Arabian citizens based upon that $1 trillion invested by the Saudi Arabian government. So it's something to definitely keep an eye on.
From Tim Pool, you can't have a society that keeps shuffling money to those who are not producing. USDA is overhauling SNAP and forcing everyone to reapply.
Yeah, and I definitely agree with this. We've seen with USAID and Musk, a lot of people on Social Security, people that are dead or no longer actually need benefits, money's getting funneled to these ghost accounts. So if you simply make everybody reapply, a large portion of people won't reapply because they don't actually exist, and the people that actually need it will reapply.
SNAP is cooked. What they're saying is there's a lot of fraud. People who shouldn't be getting SNAP are getting SNAP, and more importantly, they're dead people getting SNAP, but maybe that's just the excuse. The reality is this country is spending way too much money, and it is not sustainable. The interest on the national debt has become one of the top expenses for this country. I believe it's at number 4. And so we need to get...
And nobody's saying get rid of SNAP benefits or food benefits or a lot of these other benefits, but they do need to go in there and clean up these roles. Who actually needs it, who actually doesn't need it. And this has to happen not just with SNAP benefits, but in all kind of agencies in the federal government. Doge was extremely good about USAID. Now that entire department needed to be shut down, but most of the agencies within the federal government don't need to be shut. They just need to be absolutely cleaned up. And there needs to be some kind of accounting or real-time accounting so you can see where this money's actually going, so it stays clean, so the pork doesn't build over time.
Well, you're saying nobody's saying to get rid of it. I'm saying to get rid of it.
And
start a new program that has way stricter margins and way stricter things that you can actually acquire that are actually healthy for children.
They've already cleaned a lot of that up. I don't know if you've looked into it, but they are banning a lot of foods and sodas now. So they're using the same program. It's very often harder to start a new agency than it is to just stop and tell everybody to reapply with new qualification elements and things like this. Now, the difference between me and you is I have needed food benefits when I was growing up with a single mother, so I do know the value of a program like this, and I would not want to see this program be stopped.
No, but I understand that part, and I do understand it's necessary, but I agree with Steven Crowder. He did a whole segment in a college campus, and he was also saying to just get rid of SNAP itself because it's still entrenched within a lot of things. For example, Amazon Prime benefits, things that make no sense, and just start a new program that is actually towards nutrition and keeping people fed that actually need it.
The best way to do it is going to be to clean up this agency. If the cleanup doesn't work, then you can start a new agency and have that as a backup plan. But if you destroy this agency and then create a new agency, a lot of people are going to go hungry because there's going to have to be a transitional period. Okay, let's continue to play this though.
Spending down. Interestingly, one way to do it, or at least one area we can cut, is SNAP. It's also bad culturally when people are getting free food and exploiting the system. So what they're doing is they're going to completely deconstruct the program and require everyone to re-sign up, meaning a good majority of these people will not qualify. We can't live this way. And I don't mean morally, I mean mathematically. You can't have a society that keeps shuffling money to those who are not producing. Any system with greater output than input will collapse. And that's been the American system for a very long time. Sooner or later, the bill comes due. Now,
I'll say this, the only reason that the United States can have all these programs is because they have the world currency and they can continue to print money like a lot of other countries just can't. So let's go into this. And this was a very important cultural statement I think this gentleman made. This is on behalf of the government. I think things like this are necessary to have the healing of the country kind of take place and to show the general direction that the country wants to head in the future.
And it is very nice to see who replaced Rachel Levine and that it's not a man dressed up as a woman. From Chief Nerd, Health and Human Services, HHS Admiral Brian Christine says the Biden administration and Rachel Levine manipulated and betrayed vulnerable families around the standard of care for gender dysphoria in minors.
Yeah, and we'll play the whole statement because I generally did like the statement and I thought it was very important, and a lot of people were getting taken advantage of by the government saying trust the science when this is completely manipulated science funded by the government for the result that they wanted. And this is happening in a lot of different places, whether it's the jibby jab, whether it's this issue here, whether it's climate change. Not saying that environmental things aren't important, but when you start fudging the numbers to get funding and the result that you want, people are going to start to see through it.
This is Admiral Brian Christine, the Assistant Secretary for Health at the Department of Health and Human Services. Over the past decade, the number of children and adolescents who reject their biological sex has risen dramatically. And some analyses indicate trans-identifying teens nearly doubled from 2022 to 2023. These young people and their families are searching for answers to gender dysphoria.
And Nat here is saying this is about trans issues. And yes, I know it's about trans issues, but there's multiple issues like climate change. And I said this issue, which I meant trans issues. And there was another issue that I mentioned where they're completely putting false science out there by funding the science itself. And if they don't get the result, they don't put that scientific paper out there. And then they're able to grant grants upon these.
They deserve honesty, compassion, and the strongest evidence for the help that the medical profession can offer. And that is why the United States Department of Health and Human Services worked with 9 academics with professional backgrounds in medicine, bioethics, psychology, and philosophy to conduct the most comprehensive review to date of the standard of care for gender dysphoria in minors. The findings within the 400-page peer-reviewed report are clear. Sex-rejecting procedures such as puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones, and surgeries for children are dangerous. They can cause infertility, a loss of sexual function, reduced bone density, metabolic and cognitive effects, and certainly surgical complications. They can scar kids, both physically and emotionally, for life, and they can do irreversible harm. I implore physicians and parents to read this report and protect children from fraudulent procedures. My message to parents and kids navigating a world mired in confusion and despair is very simple. The prior administration and my predecessor, Rachel Levine, manipulated and betrayed vulnerable families. The Trump administration has the wheel now, and we will never, never abandon you. We are committed to gold standard science, not a political agenda, and we are always guided by radical transparency. Today, we are releasing nearly 200 pages of independent peer reviews that confirm the accuracy and the integrity of our findings. Around the world, countries like the United Kingdom...
You can stop it. That's pretty good. A lot of this is coming from Robert F. Kennedy Jr., so I definitely give him some praise here. He is releasing a lot of these scientific reports that were being suppressed before. Once those are released and brought onto record, it becomes a lot easier to take apart or to transition this particular department in the right direction. Okay, we'll go into the next story that we have here.
From Wall Street Apes, Canada Border Security says because they are short-staffed, illegals are no longer required to be screened before entry. Illegals simply enter Canada, click a couple boxes on their phone, and are officially refugees. In essence, to speed things up, because we are short-staffed, we're allowing people into the country without first doing that security screening. So basically, they take out their phone, theoretically, and they tap a few times, and now they're in the country as a refugee, accepted by our country? Yes.
Yeah, and the EU is doing this as well, and this is the problem. They were allowing illegal aliens and legal aliens. It was far harder to get rid of legal aliens. Now they're just making a very easy procedure, so there are no more illegal aliens, and everybody gets a legal status, so it's extremely not only hard to get them out of the country, but they're entitled to mass amounts of benefits, which are bankrupting these countries, and the citizens aren't getting the help that they need.
In essence, to speed things up, because we are short-staffed, we're allowing people into the country without first doing that security screening.
Okay, hold on a second. So you're saying that a refugee claimant coming to Canada goes to a machine and says, I want to be a refugee in Canada, hits a button, and they're in the country? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, it's not a machine, it's an application. So the one-touch system, they're given instructions on how to use that. That connects directly with IRCC, and they're given that documentation to complete on their own once they're in the country. We're not doing that.
So basically, they take out their phone, theoretically, and they tap it a few times, and they are now in the country as a refugee accepted by our country?
Yes, we get some basic data from them, and again, we do the biometrics. But beyond that, they're doing that on their own, yes. So in essence, to speed things up, because we...
And there needs to be a pause on all immigration or a severe limiting of illegal immigration at this point in a lot of these Western countries. The problem is Canada is really fudging their numbers, saying they're stopping immigration, but just transitioning it into and identifying it as other means other than immigration.
Also from Canada, from Bruce McGonigal, great news everyone. Canadians are sending $750 million to the Indo-Pacific to help them fight climate change.
Yeah, and Canada's in a real tough situation economically right now. I can't believe they're sending this much money out, and they're continuously doing this. They recently did it with the Ukraine war and funding that to the tune of hundreds of millions of dollars. Their country's falling apart, and they're just watching it burn.
Canada's provided $750 million to FinDev Canada for loans for green infrastructure projects, including in Southeast Asia. For example, a $59 million project supporting Thailand's renewable energy transition through the construction of solar technology and battery storage. $40 million in another project to support climate finance initiatives in Vietnam, just as a couple of examples. Also working very closely with regional partners such as the Asian Development Bank to support energy transition to renewable sources, including support for a 600 megawatt wind farm in Lao PDR. Canada's provided $750 million.
And Canada actually has a ton of oil and natural gas resources. They're just refusing to use it. It was a shame to see Mark Carney on national TV today, literally begging, I believe it was the UAE, for funding for things for Canada that they need. He's begging oil countries for money rather than just using the oil resources his country naturally has to kind of turn the country around. I mean, the country's going down a very, very dark path right now. The one good thing is they have so much natural resources. If they do decide to change these climate policies and this climate hysteria, they're really preaching to the people there, they will be able to turn the country around in quite spectacular fashion. The problem is they just keep electing these social liberal governments in Canada. They're going the complete wrong direction. And they're going to have a lot of pain before the voters actually realize and wake up. We moved from Canada. We now live in Mexico because I lost confidence that the Canadian people would actually vote to help themselves out. Oh, and we'll go into Macron here. We covered France quite in depth earlier as well.
From Wall Street Mav, French President Macron discussing more censorship on free speech because for the children. Instead of focusing on real issues people care about, wants censorship so he can eliminate online criticism of his policies.
And this is another reason they want a war. I mean, they understand that the Ukraine war may be coming to an end. You see them trying to have color revolutions in other Eastern European countries in order to prepare to re-engage the Russians on another front. If they get a war, they're going to be able to have absolutely draconian censorship. And I mean, they're trying to bring it in right now in a time of peace. The EU people, the people of France, Germany, and the UK need to stand up and not adopt digital ID, say we want free speech. The fact that he makes these proclamations publicly, I don't see how it helps him in any way, shape, or form.
You give the responsibility of your teenagers who spend on average 4 to 5 hours per day on the social networks. You give the responsibility of the content.
And let's just remember that the Canadian government was using a little child to have their propaganda that we need the government and the social media companies to censor us harder. This is the same line of propaganda they're trying to give and the same excuse and why they need this.
They are exposed to US private providers or big Chinese companies. And they design the content. They are in charge of the algorithm with the SA and our regulation, but still being implemented. So when we speak about cyberbullying, when we speak about being exposed to pornography, when we speak about having some mental disease, I mean, let's be clear. This is exactly made by these platforms to your children. And we decided de facto to give them this exclusivity. So this is why if we want to speak about sovereignty, we have to protect much more our children vis-à-vis all these contents and all these platforms. And the agenda of children and teenagers protection is a necessity for their mental health, for the sustainability of our education system. Second, if we want to protect our democracies and preserve the well-functioning of our democracies, let's regulate as well the content of this platform. Let's be much more demanding.
Okay, and that's good. And he's talking about the censorship. We have to protect the children, but then he's also saying we need to protect the democracies. What we need to do is protect freedom of speech and parental rights. They're just stepping all over them, not just in France, but all over these Western countries. Okay, let's go into the last couple articles here.
From Darth Powell, boomer politicians are literally saying they're going to make Gen Z get 2 jobs to fund boomer Social Security.
Yeah, and this is absolutely crazy. If this is their solution to fund Social Security, it is not going to work. I was actually watching a documentary on Social Security. Most Western countries used to have 16 workers for every 1 person on Social Security. It's now down to four workers to every 1 person on Social Security, and some countries are down to 2 workers for every 1 on Social Security. They're going to have to find a different way to fund Social Security, but telling the youth they're going to have 2 jobs, it's not going to work. And I'm glad somebody caught this on video so people are kind of aware of what's happening.
No one has said that they're cutting Social Security. Or Elon is not saying, oh, that apologies. And I don't think he said that. I never heard him say it. I have not heard him say that once.
Social Security is the biggest Ponzi scheme of all time.
So it's just, anyway, so the way we fix Social Security, one of the ways, is to tell young people you're going to get a different deal. So you give them 40 or 50 years notice so they can, they can get a second job. No one.
Yeah, and this is why you're having this divide in a lot of countries right now between the boomers and the young people. What they need to do is collapse home prices in these countries. The reason the governments aren't willing to do it is because the boomers are going to vote against any policies like that because all their savings are in the value of their home. But if these boomers already own their home, you really need to collapse the price of the housing so young people can actually afford to buy houses.
But also, this is a consequence of the population collapse we see worldwide, and it is, in some sense, also the fault of the boomers who didn't have enough children and tried to import all of their labor instead of actually funding and managing their own workers within their own country.
Well, and what you see there, that was a political rally, and it was nothing but gray hair. Political involvement is a thing with the older generation. Young people aren't involved. That's why politicians are willing to implement crazy policies like let's keep raising house prices up and up and up so the next generation can't afford it. And let's make young people get a second job so they can pay for senior citizens.
And another crazy policy from Wide Awake Media says all of these people in the UK government are Fabians, and Fabianism in a nutshell is gradualism. It believes in the slow creep of communism. That's how we're seeing what we're seeing with digital ID.
Yeah, and I kind of brought this in to talk about that, what's going on with the rise of Christian nationalism and National Socialism within the United States. And to be very cautious on if that does come into effect, there needs to be a hard line of no digital ID, no digital currency, because if you bring that system in and then you have digital ID and digital currency, it's almost a necessity to fund any socialist system. You're going to have to bring in a digital currency so you can print unlimited money, so you can fund the programs that people are voting for. I mean, it's really set up for failure.
Well, I would say the hard line is no National Socialism.
Okay, let's play this.
All of these people are Fabians, and Fabianism, in a nutshell, is gradualism. It believes in the slow creep of communism. It doesn't believe in radical authoritarian regime change. It believes in a slow process whereby you gain power gradually over time and then begin to implement irreversible change. And that's exactly what Tony Blair did with his constitutional overhaul in this country. That's now what we're seeing with digital ID. And ultimately, it will lead us to a point where we are essentially another China. That is what Keir Starmer wants. I firmly believe that. So if we want to resist that gradual decline, we have to decide what hill we're prepared to die on. And for me, that's civil liberty. If you cannot spend money without the state interfering, if you can't get a job, if you can't be educated without the state interfering, then you are already on the brink of communism. All of these people are Fabians, and Fabianism, in a nutshell, is gradualism. It believes in the slow creep of communism. It doesn't believe in radical authoritarian regime change. It believes in a slow process whereby you gain power gradually over time and then begin to implement irreversible change. And that's exactly what Tony Blair did with his constitutional overhaul in this country.
We watched it twice there. Okay, but that being said, I think that's it for today's show, actually.
Do you have an opinion about that? Last clip?
Yeah, I kind of just wanted to show that, and I thought it was a great little clip.
So we're coming back on tomorrow live with both of us on screen at 5:30 Mexico City time, 6:30 Eastern time. I finally figured it out. Please do subscribe, like, and share. It does really help us out. We're trying to get to 1,000 subscribers.
Well, we're almost at 600 subscribers, so that would be nice as well.
Yes, so thank you so much.
Okay, adios.